Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills today as they take on the Tennessee Titans. Injury updates, key matchups, our pregame superlatives are all coming up. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour pregame show. Coming to you live this morning as we prepare for the Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans. The comment section already going off. Pops Mafia coming in says, on the way to the game. Super jealous. The weather looks amazing. I'm sure the tailgating scene in Orchard Park is going to be outstanding today. Carl T coming in saying that he's going to be at the Bills Backers Bar in downtown Philly. So there is more than one way to enjoy a Buffalo Bills home game. Just the Tippecanoe comes in and says he's only here so he doesn't get fined. Don't worry. The only fine that we have here at the Air Raid Hour is we're going to fine you with a good time here over the next hour on the pregame show, because Spin comes in and says, don't worry, there are loopholes. Always going to fine you anyways. And that's, like I said, we're going to fine you with a good time here this AM. And then we got someone coming in saying happy 100 for Josh Allen as he plays his 100th or starts, his 100th career NFL game. I guess last week was technically his 100th because he came in for Nathan Peterman against that awful game against the Ravens, his rookie season. But we got start number 100 for Josh Allen today. And Dave, the Bills are back in the 1 p.m. window here on a Sunday afternoon. It just feels right.
It does feel right. I see Spin's comment there. I don't think that bar's a chain. We had a place in Raleigh called Tiernanog. I think that's how you say it. Don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I wasn't about
Irish
to say
thing,
that one.
but,
I wasn't about to say that one.
We had one in Raleigh as well, so maybe it's the same. Yeah, it is nice to be back in the 1 p.m. slot. We've had kind of an odd schedule as far as times. This year, our schedule was very front loaded with primetime games. It seemed like we were on primetime a good amount to start the season. And this Titans Bills history is a bit of an interesting one, right? Because it's not like a traditional rivalry in the sense that they're like a division rival or something like that. But the Bills Titans have kind of had a bit of a tense history, I would say, between the fans. Goes back to to the Music City Miracle. The last 5 games, 2 of those games, the Titans actually worked over the Bills in 2 of those games. Granted, that was with Derrick Henry and crew. Today's Titans team, a little bit different than the ones we've seen in recent years, but is a little bit more animosity between these two teams than maybe you would think just looking at the schedule and looking at the calendar and the slate of games today across the NFL.
Obviously, one of the bigger news stories today for the Buffalo Bills is Amari Cooper enters the lineup, or he's expected to be active today. Jordan Schultz reporting the Buffalo Bills gave the Amari Cooper a crash course on the Buffalo Bills playbook, and they intend to use him quite often here in this game against the Titans at home. What are your expectations for week 1 of Amari Cooper?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like this game could go game script wise. This could be a game where maybe the Bills don't pass the ball a ton. We will see kind of how it plays out. But I mean, my initial prediction somewhere between maybe like 25 and 30 snaps. And I think that's maybe going to put you at about maybe half the snaps offensively. If the Bills kind of do come out and decide to run the ball a ton, I think you'll see Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman on the boundaries doing the run blocking on those snaps. And then potentially you have Amari Cooper coming in for passing situations. So I don't think he's necessarily going to play like 80, 90% of the snaps in this game. I think they're going to use him, deliberately in situations where they want to, make sure that he's on the field as a potential weapon to receive the football. I don't think they necessarily need to throw him out there to run block, although you don't necessarily want to give away what you're doing if you're the Bills on those types of situations. But I wonder if that's not even going to matter too much. So I'd say maybe around 50% of the snaps today. Anything more than that, I'll take it. But I also don't think that if you see Amari Cooper or really any of the Bills receivers with a subdued stat line today, it may not necessarily be because it was an ineffective game from the passing game. It could just be game planning as well. So we'll watch the game. We'll see how he gets used. And I mean, obviously, the Bills would love to have some plays for him right away because
Mhm.
this passing game does need to get a little bit of juice going. And we'll talk about it when we talk about the Titans defense, but I do expect him around that 50% mark today.
Yeah, kind of like almost what MVS has been getting the past couple of weeks, but maybe actually targeted in the
Mm.
passing game would be probably somewhere around the snap shares that I expect from Amari Cooper. You also have the late breaking news yesterday that Will Levis will be sidelined with his shoulder
Mm.
injury. Now, I've been very vocal on social media. It is pretty clear that Will Levis and Brian Callahan are just not a fit. I
Yeah.
think Brian Callahan is super excited not to have Will Levis as his starting quarterback today, even though the alternative is Mason Rudolph, who will be starting in his place. What are your thoughts on Mason Rudolph starting this game as opposed to Will Levis starting this game?
Yeah, in some ways, it doesn't move the needle much
Mhm.
because this passing attack for the Titans is pretty abysmal. We saw Mason Rudolph obviously in the playoff game last year against the Steelers and did a decent job in him. Obviously, he's the veteran. He's going to come in. He's probably going to do a little bit of a better job than Will Levis has in protecting the football. Um, but he also doesn't bring
Mhm.
sort of that dynamic element of the rushing game that Will Levis potentially could as a little bit of an X factor for him. As bad as his passing attack's been, he did bring you something on the ground a little bit. So I would say like it doesn't move the needle a ton for me. I think I would have preferred to see Will Levis, to be honest, but I
Yeah.
don't think that seeing Mason Rudolph is going to change things all that much for the Bills, especially because they have seen Mason Rudolph um, even within the last calendar year in playing against him. So um, I think the Titans make this move. It sounds like Will Levis is going to be week to week, 4 to 5 week injury. It sounds like from what I've seen online, and
Mhm.
this Titans team's down bad in their passing game. So a move like this, there's really in the argument where it can't get much worse, and you always think, well, it always can. I don't think it can get much worse for the Titans and what they've had in this passing attack. So we'll see.
Yeah, you definitely get less variance from Will Levis. I think the ability to make the big play, in terms of the quarterback really making the big play, that kind of goes away. But at the same time, so do I think a lot of the turnovers and a lot of the backbreaking turnovers that have been
Mhm.
affecting the Titans. I mean, the Titans could have two, you could argue three. Some might even argue could be a 4-win football team right now if they had a quarterback with a pulse. They've been in some of these games late all season outside of the Green Bay game, but some
Mhm.
back-breaking decisions from Will Levis has cost the Tennessee Titans in a huge way. So this is a team now, less variance from the quarterback position, a guy in Mason Rudolph who makes the trains run on time. And they, even though some of the guys are older, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, and then they obviously have Tony Pollard, they have some playmakers as well on that Titans offense. And a quarterback who can just make the trains run on time could be a really nice change of pace for them, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and we're going to talk about it. Calvin Ridley only has 9 catches on the year. He was their big offseason acquisition. Obviously, their receiving core, an aging receiving core, but a
Mhm.
veteran receiving core that's going to know where to be on the field, going to know what, from a route perspective, like they're going to run crisp routes. They've got experience. Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, while older, that's a decent trio. And then you mentioned Tony Pollard, and the Bills have struggled against the ground game. Now it does help that Tyjae Spears is going to be out for this game for the Titans. Although
Mhm.
Tony Pollard can handle that sort of every down role for them, he is a good third down back as well. So Tony Pollard also can't be overlooked in this one. So yeah, if Mason Rudolph can kind of keep the chains moving and keep this team on track, then they have a chance to move the ball against this Bills defense. But I think as always, it'll come down to can this Titans team put the ball in the end zone as opposed to settling for field goals?
Mhm.
Because that's kind of where they've struggled. And as you mentioned, other than the Green Bay game, one-score games across the board for this team. Only win coming against the Tyler Huntley-led Miami Dolphins. So, and they were right in that game. Came back a little bit against the Colts last week in the Joe Flacco versus Will Levis Bowl. So, yeah, it's a team that has some grit, but I also don't know that the coaching staff fully has them where they want to be. Obviously, that can be a number of reasons, but you mentioned the Levis and Callahan sort of rift, I'll call it. Not going to be that the case today.
Looking at some other factors that could influence the game, the weather today is going to be in the 60s, a beautiful day in Orchard Park. However, depending on which weather models you look at, some predict some rather strong wind gusts, which could give the Buffalo Bills a disadvantage today in the kicking game with Tyler Bass versus the veteran in Nick Folk.
Yeah, I mean, good kudos to Tyler Bass for coming out and answering questions from the media this week and just saying like he, needs to be better. The Bills brought in kickers, signed a kicker to the practice squad. And like the reality of the situation is the Bills aren't going to find a better kicker on the streets right now than Tyler Bass. So he's just going to have to work through whatever he needs to work through. And look, I expect the Bills will probably be a little bit more aggressive anyway today, knowing that this Titans offense has struggled, knowing that if they can convert some fourth downs in Titans territory today and kind of convert that into points in the end zone rather than field goals, that could be really a huge uphill battle then for the Titans to climb. Knowing that the fail safe is that you can put your defense likely back out on the field without a whole lot of worry that this Titans team is going to put up, 24 plus points on you. So I do expect the Bills to be aggressive. And likewise, I expect the Titans to be aggressive as well.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, like following some of the beat reporters from both teams to see exactly how those kickers are kicking in pregame. And if the reports are not so kind, how that affects aggressiveness on fourth down, aggressiveness past the 50-yard line, maybe choosing to try to punt and pin teams deep. This could be that kind of game today if the wind is truly affecting the kickers that some people predict in a way that some people predict it might in this game. Looking at injuries, we've already announced Will Levis for the Tennessee Titans. They're also going to be without Keandre Coburn, Tajay Spears, as you mentioned, and Cedric Gray. Questionable for the game is L'Jarius Sneed, their huge free agent acquisition with a quadriceps injury. If he can't go, that'll be a huge boon for the Buffalo Bills and their passing game. On the Bills side, there are two players that are questionable. Mike Edwards with an illness and Ray Davis with a calf, which I believe Sean McDermott said popped up late in the Bills game and then he re-aggravated in practice. But we do have James Cook back, so expect probably all three running backs to get some run because I'm sure James Cook isn't the healthiest in the world. Ray Davis clearly is not the healthiest in the world. No Frank Gore Jr. call-up, which is good for Ray Davis's ability to play in this game. And then who knows? Maybe we'll see a game where the Buffalo Bills have to lean a little bit more on a Ty Johnson here against the Tennessee Titans. But no major crazy injuries for the Buffalo Bills today. James Cook returns and Ed Oliver returns as well.
Yeah, James Cook getting those 2 full practices in on Thursday and Friday was big. We always thought that this could be like a 1 to 3 week type of injury. Seems like he was fairly close to playing in that game against the Jets, but the Bills probably smartly held him out of that game, gave Ray Davis an extended look, and he delivered. So unfortunate to see kind of the flip-flop this week in practice with Ray Davis aggravating the calf, although, like you mentioned, the no call-up. Ty Johnson looked pretty good against the Jets as well. So I think, like, yeah, this could be a little bit of a 3-headed monster, but it could be more of a Cook and Ty Johnson timeshare than we've seen. Because in games past, like even with all three healthy, we have seen in a few games past where Ray Davis didn't get
2 carries versus the Texans.
Yeah, so they may want to try to save that calf a bit for Ray Davis, depending on kind of how this game is going. Although, again, I do think stylistically that it could be a nice opportunity for the Bills to kind of get all three backs involved. But I would be probably a bit cautious with Ray Davis, given that James Cook, although no injury designation, the Bills have seemingly been giving no injury designations to guys who have been a little banged up this year. Curtis Samuel comes to mind. So we'll just have to see how effective James Cook can be today. And I do predict right now that Ray Davis would be active, but you never know. He may be inactive. I doubt it because they didn't do the call up, but you just never know.
We got a super chat coming in from Just the Tippecanoe. He says Epinesa gets another pair of sacks today. Go Bills. Always appreciate your super chats and just your comments in general. Just Tippecanoe. And thank you so much again. But yeah, AJ Epinesa showing up last week in a big way. I know some people were saying, oh, he's there, he exists, but we need some more splash plays from him. And he showed up with some splash plays this week. So hopefully that trend can continue for AJ Epinesa.
Yeah, and obviously had the one terrible one wiped out because of the roughing call, which was just perfect. I mean, I watched back the game, and honestly, the first sack that didn't get called, which rightfully didn't, seemed like a harder hit, like more weight than the second one. Whatever, we don't need to go back to that. It was nice to see him pop up. I would like to see Groot, as some people have mentioned in the comments section, pop up as well. Could be a nice game for them to take advantage of this Titans offensive line in a fairly statuesque, I'll say, Mason Rudolph in the pocket. Really a big game for those two guys and Von Miller, hopefully, if the Bills are doing what they're supposed to be doing and putting this Titans team in 3rd and longs as they should be doing today.
Now let's take a look at the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Tennessee Titans defense. When you look at some of the old school traditional statistics, yards, points, etc., the Titans have one of the better defenses in the National Football League. But when you look at the DVOA, I saw you posting some statistics on social media. If you look at the advanced analytics, you could poke some holes in this Tennessee Titans defense, which on paper has looked pretty solid this year. What are some things that you have sort of uncovered as you've been researching this Titans defense this week?
Yeah, so Titans defense DVOA 9th overall, 10th against the pass, 6th against the rush. Their raw statistics will tell you that they're the top pass defense in the NFL. So you can see here that the DVOA sort of not being as kind to them as the raw statistics would tell you. I mean, they have faced a couple of bottom tier passing offenses. The Bears are getting it going now. I understand that. But outside of this last game against Jacksonville, the Bears passing offense really hadn't been that good this year. The Dolphins, another team that struggled with the passing attack this year. The Jets, Colts, and Packers have obviously been the stiffest tests, but they haven't necessarily faced, outside of the Packers, I would say, a true threat from a passing perspective. And so that's why I think the DVOA here is telling you that while they're still a good pass D, they're maybe a little bit more susceptible than the raw statistics would tell you, which has them at 1st overall. They haven't allowed a 200-yard passer all year, and they've had 2 games where they've allowed under 100 passing yards against the Bears and the Colts. Now, that Bears game was week 1. We obviously saw what happened. That Bears defense basically carried the way for that win. But the DVOA is telling you maybe that their pass D a little bit more susceptible than you would think. And then on the rushing side, the raw statistics have them as the 9th best rush defense and 6th in DVOA. So DVOA is saying they're a little bit better against the run than the raw statistics. But either way, this is a top 10 run defense. And they've played some teams that, like the Packers, are 2nd in the NFL in rushing. So that's kind of helped them, albeit they didn't have such a great game there, but they played some decent rushing teams. And so they're actually slightly favoring them here from a DVOA perspective. And then when you start to look at the individual matchups, they're 6th against wide receiver 1, 2nd against wide receiver 2. So they're good on the boundary. That lines up. Middle of the pack against wide receiver 3, slot receivers. We saw Josh Downs last week have a pretty good game against this Titans defense from the slot, and 15th against the tight end. The Colts, who really don't use the tight end a ton in their offense, Mo Alley Cox was 2nd on the team last week with 441. So Shakir Kincaid, that's kind of where I'm looking in this game to attack this Titans defense.
Yeah, and I know you posted some statistics on social media as well. -7 in turnover differential. They're the 2nd worst team in the National Football League. Obviously, Will Levis and that offense plays a role in that as well, but only 1 interception on the season for this Titans secondary. So even though they've been, locking some guys down. They haven't exactly been forcing turnovers while locking those guys down. Third fewest sacks in the National Football League is something that you posted as well on
Yep.
social media. And I want to add to that, the Titans defense is 31st in pressure rate this
Yep.
season per PFF. So even though
It's
the
hollow statistics,
yeah,
right?
like
Their defense is like
mhm,
they're stopping yardage and things, but they're not
yeah,
creating toxic plays.
yeah.
So you got to
And
keep that going.
I just feel like even though maybe some of the data would suggest like, oh, it's going to be hard to pass on a team like this, I expect a pass heavier game plan today, especially with L'Jarius Sneed dealing with a what seems like a significant injury. I mean, he was DNP all week and he's questionable. So even if he does play, how well can he play? You have Cook still dinged. You have Ray Davis dinged. The Titans are very stout in the middle of that defense with Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. So why not just go out and use the passing game as an extension of the running game, get Amari Cooper involved, pepper that defense with passes and utilize Josh Allen, who just had that left glove removed in practice
Mm,
this week. He's only getting healthier. So I expect the Buffalo Bills to have a pass heavier game plan. We've seen a lot of teams try to attack the Buffalo Bills with cover one, and the Buffalo Bills have struggled sort of with that cover one. But the Titans are fifth in the NFL with two high looks at 56%. So are they going to get out of the mold of what they've been doing all year? I think a lot of things are aligning for the Buffalo Bills to attack this Tennessee Titans team, or at least try to attack them through the air
mhm.
in this game.
I agree with you. And I think that, if you start to look at some other, sites, statistics and grading scales, and, you put a grain of salt on all this, PFF's overall team grades has the Titans as a bottom half of the NFL defense. They have them
Mhm,
21st against the pass. So some of these other sort of analytics sites are telling you that this team can be passed against. And also, by the way, didn't mention it just a second ago with DVOA. DVOA, they're 20th against running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield. So with James Cook back today, your best pass catching running back, maybe instead of running him into that big Titans interior line all day, you get him involved a bit in the passing game as well, where the Titans have struggled a little bit. Even guys like Tyler Goodson last week had some success for the Colts in the receiving game. Trey Sermon as well. So seen the Packers have some success with Emmanuel Wilson against this team through the air as their running back, pass catching running back. So James Cook out of the backfield also could be a factor here as the Titans bottom third, just outside
mhm.
or just inside the bottom 12 from a DVOA standpoint in defending running backs as receivers.
We talked at the top of the show about how much we expect to see Amari Cooper today and how much we expect and how we expect, excuse me, Amari Cooper to be utilized. My next question to you is sort of what effect does Amari Cooper have on the rest of this receiving core, specifically in this game? Just the presence of him on the field, how does that take the pressure off some other guys? Well, how do expectations change for some other guys in this offense?
Well, it's interesting because you'd like to say it takes the pressure a little bit off of Keon Coleman, right? Because maybe as the rookie, there's not as much pressure on him to contribute
Mhm,
as a receiver. But on the other hand, he's a better weapon, I would say, or a potential weapon than a guy like Mac Hollins. So maybe it's Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper on the field at sometimes at the same time where you can then
mhm,
kind of move Mac Hollins down. But the Bills are kind of stubbornly loving Mac Hollins. I don't know if stubborn is the right word, but he's been getting targets. He's been getting red zone targets. So who knows? Maybe it's a situation where you see less of Keon Coleman on the field, which I know we don't
mhm,
want to necessarily hear, but I think it makes it maybe more of a split between Coleman and Hollins. And depending on sort of when you want to use these guys, it sort of maybe takes a little bit of pressure more so off of Keon Coleman to contribute. Although I've liked what I've seen from him the past couple games in some limited targets. I think just generally overall, it puts less pressure on guys like Coleman and
mhm,
Hollins to contribute offensively, where maybe it's not necessarily this game, but as we move forward here, Amari Cooper is clearly the wide receiver one on this team now, or will be very soon. And
mhm.
so I do think it takes a little bit less pressure,
Yeah.
takes pressure off those guys. And if we talked about kind of going into this, everybody eats and like, oh, the Bills don't have a tendency because they have this sort of anyone can get at the same time. Like
Mhm.
it's been pretty clear, and we kind of talked about this as well, is like who's going to be the guy that can step up in the big moments. I would expect that guy to be Amari Cooper going forward. Maybe it's not today, but it should be going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned Matt Collins. I mean, he's been targeted 17 times or excuse me, 19 times this season, and he's only caught 7 of his 19 targets. So the catch rate is not great. I don't mind him on the field, and like I've been very pro Matt Collins, right? And I've even said it, like I don't hate Matt Collins, but Joe Brady has been making me hate Matt Collins just because of the way that he's been a focal point of this offense. He can get after it in the run game. Like we saw Keon Coleman's touchdown against the Houston Texans. That was Mac Hollins getting after it in the run game. He can be an occasional weapon in certain situations. We've seen him catch 2 touchdowns this year. I'm not going to sit here and like bash on Matt Collins, but at the same time, you need to start funneling this offense through Amari Cooper once he gets, you know, initiated into the offense. You have to funnel this offense through Khalil Shakir once he gets healthy. You need to funnel this offense through Dalton Kincaid, and you need to funnel this offense through James Cook. Now, we didn't have Amari Cooper a week ago. James Cook is dinged up, and Khalil Shakir is dinged up. So it's easier said than done. But the Buffalo Bills need to make sure as guys are getting healthy, this offense is funneling through 4 or 5 guys, and the rest are auxiliary football players, because I just can't envision a world where the Buffalo Bills can survive when their best players are being targeted like 2 or 3 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
got to start living in a world where they can feed some of these guys. We have some interesting comments here from Charles G. He says, I can envision how Michael Thomas was used in his prime and think Keon can have a similar impact if he's moved inside more often. And then Pops Mafia comes back with an argument I've heard a ton of times. If you move Coleman inside, where does Shakir line up? And this has been sort of a topic of conversation that we've been having inside of our Cover One group chat. And I've been sort of getting a lot of pushback. I would like to see Keon Coleman moved around a little bit more. Now, people like Eric, people like Aaron, like they've been pushing back at me saying like he's still young, he's still developing. It's better for his development to put him at one spot. It displaces Khalil Shakir, puts him in a position that he's less good at on the boundary, all these various different things. I I would like to see the Buffalo Bills offense be a little less predictable. I'm not saying Keon Coleman has to be the permanent slot receiver. Like there are some people who are saying like use him in the slot, use him in the slot, and everyone just assumes that means move him to the slot. And that's not, I don't think, what people want. People are just like, hey, 5, 6 times a game, or 7, 8 times a game, let's get Keon Coleman lined up in the slot and let's see what he can do over the middle of the football field. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would love there to be a little bit less predictability in the Buffalo Bills offense. I can understand right now maybe why they're not moving him around, but I think as he develops and as he progresses, he needs to add that versatile element to his game to be able to line up in multiple spots. And I think over the long run, the Bills will be doing a disservice to him if they don't allow him to do that.
I think over the long run, you're right? I think over the long run, or really the rest of the season, like Mac Hollins is really the one
Mhm.
guy who you'd say like he's got to stay outside at all times. Cooper, Coleman, these guys can come into the slot at times. I do think if you're going to, let's say, go with a 4 wide set, your best weapons on the field would be Cooper and Coleman on the outside, Shakir and Samuel on the inside. But in situations where maybe you want to get Coleman in the slot, maybe you have Cooper on the outside and Mac Hollins on the, I don't know, right? I do think that it's about finding more creative ways to get him the ball. Where is he comfortable? I do want him to be in a situation where he's, use the phrase thinking less and just playing more, right? And just being in a place where he's comfortable. But I think if the Bills want to kind of evolve the offense, they can move him around. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I also think they have guys like Samuel and Shakir and Kincaid, and like they have options already to kind of be in the middle of the field that I think over time we'll see it, but I just don't know how soon we'll see it, I would say.
Another great comment here from Pops Mafia. He says, speaking of predictable, seems like 98% of the time Alec Anderson is on the field as that jumbo package offensive lineman. It is a run play. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but I'm sure it is a pretty high number. I think there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, with all the injuries the Buffalo Bills had to the wide receiver room, and by all the injuries, I mean just Khalil Shakir because he was the best receiver, right? I think the Buffalo Bills were trying to, number one, put themselves in manageable second and third down situations. They didn't want to get into these third and longs because, quite frankly, they didn't have the dogs at receiver to be in those types of down and distance situations. And number two, I do think the Buffalo Bills are trying to set up play action and get those deep shots. You saw them take a couple of deep shots week one to MVS. You saw MVS sort of do that comeback route when he faked it deep and came back for that 15-yarder in the week one game. So it's clear the Buffalo Bills have an intent. They are trying to set something up, but I just don't think the Buffalo Bills had the dogs at wide receiver to actually make it work. And that is the reason why you were seeing such a heavy tendency on running the ball when Alec Anderson was in the game. I think that'll change as Khalil Shakir gets healthier and as Amari Cooper gets acclimated.
Yeah, and it's also like a lot of new faces, right? Outside of Khalil Shakir for Joe Brady, like Joe Brady's first year, all new faces. It's going to take a little bit of time to kind of find the right blend here. And now
Mhm.
the added challenge, and it's a nice challenge to have, but the added challenge now figuring out what to do with Amari Cooper and what that means for the rest of the guys on the team. So
Mhm.
it's going to take a little bit of experimentation, I think, to figure out the best blend here. But the good news is I do really like the mix of
Mhm.
guys now, and I think it was nice to see a lot more efficient game last week from Josh Allen against the Jets. So and a tough defense too. So I think yeah, we'll see a little bit more
Mhm.
upswing here going forward with some tendency breakers, and maybe today's a good game to try that out because
Yeah.
you have to think the Titans are going to be really trying to slow down that run game to force the Bills into a one-dimensional style game, and it could be today. Today could be the day we
Mhm.
see that.
Some other things offensively, I'm keeping my eye out for James Cook and his health, Khalil Shakir and his health. How healthy are they? How effective can they be? Expecting an uptick from Shakir, another week removed from that ankle injury. Still, James Cook is still a mystery bag, right? With that toe injury and this being his first week back. And then the other two things I'm looking for is how does Amari Cooper open up Dalton Kincaid? Do we
Mhm.
finally see like that big Dalton Kincaid game? And just more explosives from Keon Coleman. Maybe again, the influx of Amari Cooper just allows Keon Coleman to keep creating those explosives because he's the toxic differential maker on this football team right now. He's the guy making some of those big plays either after the catch or down the field. So when the Buffalo Bills need like a big play, Keon Coleman has been a guy who's delivered some of those this year. So those are four guys I'll have my eye on in this game offensively. Any thoughts on that or any other things you'll have your eye on
Well,
offensively?
I think it's a good point on Coleman, right? Because in theory, this then in most cases should get Coleman matched up on the CB2 as opposed to
Mhm.
CB1 for the opposing team. And then Kincaid is the guy and Shakir over the middle again. Downs last week, really solid game over the middle. I would love to see the Bills look at that Titans Colts tape and look at how the Colts deployed Josh Downs and kind of do that with Khalil Shakir a bit today and then take some calculated down the field, down the seam type of shots to Dalton Kincaid today. I think if you could see Khalil Shakir today when he's close to 100% healthy, which he should be, hopefully at this point, as you mentioned, we have to
Mhm.
watch out for that. He could be a 7 to 10 target game today for him. So I will definitely be looking out for that.
On to the Buffalo Bills defense versus this Tennessee Titans offense. We sort of already mentioned it at the top. Rudolph in. There's going to be less variance, probably less turnovers of the football. He's a train run on time type of quarterback who's not really going to make the splash play. But he does have the wide receivers to maybe make things work in Ridley, Hopkins, and Boyd. This switch at quarterback is likely something that those three receivers are probably either consciously or subconsciously happy about at this time, just the way Will Levis has been playing. But what does the DVOA tell us about this
Mhm.
Titans offense, even though it's been a Titans offense that has mostly been run by Will Levis?
Yeah, so DVOA on offense, not super kind to the Titans passing wise. They're 28th overall in DVOA offense, 30th in passing, 14th in rushing, and the DVOA is aligning with the raw statistics here as they are the second worst passing offense based on raw statistics in the NFL, only ahead of the New England Patriots, who have been absolutely abysmal throwing the ball this year. They have faced a couple decent pass defenses in the Dolphins, Jets, and Bears. However, this team has not been able to get these weapons going. Calvin Ridley, only 9 catches so far in the year. DeAndre Hopkins still probably getting back to health after he missed most of training camp with that knee injury. This team is just painfully inept at passing the football. Now, maybe the insertion of Mason Rudolph creates a little bit of a spark there, but they've only had one game all year where they've thrown the ball for over 200 yards. That was against the Packers. And before this Will Levis switch, only Will Levis and Jacoby Brissett of quarterbacks who have had at least 5 starts this year are the only 2 quarterbacks with under 700 passing yards on the season. So not great for them. Rushing, it's a little bit better. Again, DVOA is aligning here. 15th in the NFL on raw statistics, 14th in DVOA. So very close here. They faced 2 top 10 rush defenses this year in the Packers and the Bears. They did have 140 rushing yards against the Bears, only 33 against the Packers. They have had 130 plus rushing yards in 4 out of 5 games this year. They've had a bye already. So, and 142 and 146 respectively in their last 2. Tony Pollard, a good running back. Tajay Spears hasn't necessarily had the same impact that he had as a complement to Derrick Henry last year, and he will be out for this game. So a lot of this rushing attack for the Titans is going to fall on Tony Pollard's shoulders today. I'm expecting him to be a bell cow style back today. This guy, Julius Chestnut, who's their now backup, I think he's only had like 6 rushing attempts in his entire NFL career or something like that. So the DVOA here tells you that the Titans are likely going to focus on running the ball with Tony Pollard. The Bills have given up some plays on the ground in recent weeks against Breece Hall, and others. So that's where you would go if you're the Titans. And again, another note here, Titans, the 3rd worst 3rd down offense in the NFL, only converting 29.3%. So this is an offense that really struggles in the passing game. The DVOA and the raw statistics are lining up here. This is a bad passing team, a decent rushing team, and it's likely the Bills will need to kind of focus their efforts on stopping Tony Pollard on the ground, force this Titans team into long down and distances where they haven't been able to convert on 3rd downs. And obviously, we've just went through the passing statistics, not a good passing team.
Yeah, Charles G comes in. You mentioned down and distance, Dave, and then Charles G comes in and says, rushing Rudolph should be much easier. We know he's going to be at the same spot every time. Go get him. In theory, that is true, but the only problem is by the time you get there to get him, will the ball still be in his hands? You could count on the ball still being in Will Levis's hands. Mason Rudolph, more of a savvy veteran, he's going to try to get that ball out quickly. But if you get him into 3rd and long situations and you can wrap up tackling, he's going to be dumping that ball off a ton. That's advantageous to you in those down and distances. But you mentioned Tony Pollard with Tajay Spears out with injury. And after Tajay Spears went out with injury last week, Tony Pollard had a 90% snap share. He had 85% of the team's carries. This offense is going to funnel through him today. It's going to be the Tony Pollard show for the Tennessee Titans. The Buffalo Bills need to prepare for him in the running game, in the screen game, and in the passing game. They need to make sure that they're not getting beaten by Tony Pollard, especially in the passing game, the way they were allowing Breece Hall to beat them last week. We just hammered home on the pregame show what the Jets were going to do on offense. They did exactly that, and the Buffalo Bills did not have an answer for it. And the Jets had a ton of chunk plays against the Buffalo Bills. We tightened up in the red zone, which helped us out. But man, they allowed Breece Hall to have whatever he wanted last week, and we cannot allow Tony Pollard to do that this week.
Yeah, and obviously, I think I can't remember if I mentioned it on another show or what, but I feel like Tony Pollard's almost like a Breece Hall light in a way, like body type, kind of similar to Breece Hall, not quite as explosive as Breece Hall, but still a guy that can hurt you in the passing game. We saw in those years in Dallas as well. He was really used as a nice complement to Zeke, and especially in the passing game. And he has a nice career average yards per carry, can hurt you in the passing game. And I think Tony Pollard will be probably at near the top of the respect you players list today when it
Mhm.
comes to this Titans team, because they don't have a ton of star power per se, but you got to tighten up. The Bills have really struggled in defending running backs in the passing game, as we know, and this has kind of been a trend. Can they tighten it up today? Can they be a better tackling team today? I think so. I think that
Mhm.
this team will come out at home in that 1 o'clock slot. I think the vibes from the crowd are going to be really good. And I think you'll see a Bills team that's really flying around the field. Now, Titans may try to use that to their advantage, a little misdirection. We'll see. But I expect the Bills to come out fired up today on defense
Mhm.
and ready to shut down Tony Pollard. Now, volume is still going to be there for him. I don't know. The Bills just have to limit his efficiency,
Mhm.
and I think that will be a success story for them.
Yeah, you're gonna see. I think you're gonna see from the Buffalo Bills today on defense their typical zone with disguising coverages. You're gonna see their typical pressure with four, but a mix of sort of creeper pressures to sort of simulate a blitz or a pass rush. They need a tackle. And I think with Mason Rudolph now, the trains are going to run on time for the Tennessee Titans offense. They're going to get Tony Pollard the ball in his hands. I think that the receivers will have better games in Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. I think they're going to be able to move the football. But once they get down into that red area, the Buffalo Bills defense just has to force field goals. The past few weeks, they've been sort of breaking a little bit in the red zone, at least in comparison to their norm, how they usually perform when running that sort of bend but don't break defense. So the Buffalo Bills, I think the Titans are going to move the ball better with Mason Rudolph. Just got to force those, like, get that stop by the 40-yard line and make them choose whether they're going to punt the ball and pin
Mhm,
you deep, or whether they're going to try a field goal, or whether they're going to get aggressive and try to go for it. When they get down to that red area, just force them to kick field goals, and then your offense go down and score touchdowns. Like, that's the way that you're going to beat the Tennessee Titans. I think it's silly in the National Football League to think you're just going to come out and utterly dominate another team and they're going to have, like, 0 yards, minimal yards, this or that. Like, the Titans are going to probably look decently respectable moving the football today on offense. It's up to the Buffalo Bills defense to shut them down in the red area and to shut them down early. Don't give them hope. Don't give them that first drive touchdown. Like,
mhm,
we've seen this defense give up these early drive touchdowns, put our offense in a little bit of a hole, and now the offense, I'm not blaming the defense for what the offense has done in some of these past games, but don't make your offense, you have to play from down 7-0 if you kick the ball off to the Tennessee Titans, right? Like, make
mhm.
sure that you're forcing them to kick field goals, make your offense score touchdowns, and then go from there.
Exactly, and I think that the Bills did show a little bit of life in the defensive red zone against the Jets. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, there was a fortunate holding call at the goal line that took away a touchdown from Braylon Allen. You know, Taylor Rapp made a nice play in the end zone as well against Garrett Wilson. So the Bills did clamp down a bit in the red zone against the Jets, and obviously that ultimately was a huge difference in the game. Notably, also with Zerline missing those two field goals. But at the end of the day, you're right. Like, if you hold this Titans team to field goals, there's no reason why this Bills
Mhm.
team uh, cannot win this game. And so the red zone defense, I think, is critical. Um, the yards, I'm not so concerned about. You just have to force this team to, like you said, make decisions once they get across the Bills side of the field. And then if you're a Bills offense, like, put as much pressure as you can on this Titans offensive line, put them in
Mhm.
passing game script, take Tony Pollard out of this game if you can. And, you mentioned Rudolph's going to get the ball out of his hands a little bit more quickly, but this offensive line has still struggled a bit to pass
Mhm.
block. Levis had been sacked 15 times in 5 games coming into this. So I don't expect it to be a necessarily 3 sacks per game type of average here, but like, you could get to
Mhm.
Rudolph 2 or 3 times in this game, and that could make a big difference as well.
Yeah, Charles G comes in and says, I want sacks, I want turnovers, enough of the bend but don't break, crush this team at home and don't give them any hope. I don't disagree with you, Charles. Like, I mean, in a perfect world, I think every Bills fan would love to see a defense like that, but I just don't think that this is the way the defense is constructed. Matt Milano's not walking through that door anytime soon. Ed Oliver is just getting back to health. Von Miller is suspended. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer no longer on this football team. We're still acclimating two safeties. And Jordan Schultz, the report came in this week. The Bills are still looking to add another safety because they would prefer DeMar Hamlin not be in the starting lineup. They would prefer him more as a third safety type. So this is a defense that I don't know if they have the firepower to do exactly what it is that you want them to do in this game. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad defense, because we've seen them. I thought that they, after the first couple of touchdowns, and again, once Nico Collins went out, I think they found their footing against the Texans in the back half of that football game. After that, all that early nonsense, again, it was the offense that made us unable to come back and win that football game. I think for the most, the jet scheme was frustrating here or there, but you mentioned they locked down in the red zone and found some more success in the red zone, and the Jets only scored 20 points, right? As long as the Bills defense is keeping teams under 20 points or around that 20-point mark, I think they're doing their job. And the expectation is that this offense needs to go out there and score 27, 28, 29 points per game, because that is what that offense is expected to do. So I don't disagree with you, Charles. I just don't think at this point that is something it's a pleasant surprise when it happened. It's not something that we should be predicting or sort of expect. But Dave, any final thoughts on this Buffalo Bills defense?
No, the red zone defense, I think, is key. I'll just give myself a slight pat on the back before we get to superlatives. I did predict the exact score of the Bills-Jets game last week, 23-20. Now, it was a weird outcome, but I'll take it. And yeah, red zone defense to me, getting off the field on third down against a team that has been very bad on third downs on offense this year. Don't give up these third and longs that you've been giving up all year. The Bills' third down defense hasn't been great this year, as we know. So I know it's like weakness against weakness here, but this Bills defense needs to get off the field on third down today.
Yeah, I think we were both pretty pretty high on Ray Davis last week. Had him as our wild card player of the game as well. Wasn't expecting him to carry the ball as much as he did, but we predicted over 50 yards for him. We expected a big play in the passing game from him. The only place that he didn't deliver was the end zone. We predicted he would score a touchdown. And Josh Allen apologized, I think, to Ray Davis after the game.
He deserved that one. He deserved that one on that first drive. He deserved the touchdown. Yeah.
All right. So now on to our pregame superlatives. We start, as always, with our Take Me Higher player of the game. All right. As always, we start our pregame superlatives with our Take Me Higher player. This is a player of the game. This is a star player on the Buffalo Bills, not named Josh Allen, that needs to step up and have a big game for the Buffalo Bills to be successful. Dave, who is your Take Me Higher player of the game?
Another week removed from that ankle injury. Looking again, I've hinted at this kind of throughout the show. I want the Bills to look at the way that the Colts deployed Josh Downs last week out of the slot. 9 catches for him last week, had a touchdown as well. Khalil Shakir is my Take Me Higher player of the game today. I think out of the slot, he can do damage against this Titans defense. Getting closer to full health, I think for at least another week as Amari Cooper gets acclimated, Khalil Shakir is still going to be the go-to guy. And who knows, maybe he still will be the go-to guy as the year goes on. But to me, I think it's a day where you could see 7 to 10 targets to Khalil Shakir. Hopefully he is close to 100%. Obviously no injury designation for him this week. So for me, got to be Khalil Shakir today. Keep those chains moving for the Bills, ultimately leading them to scoring touchdowns in the red zone as opposed to field goals. So Khalil Shakir, Take Me Higher.
We got Charles G coming in saying, feeling a big time game from Groot and AJ Epinesa. That would be nice and go a long way towards the Buffalo Bills victory. And I'm going to go with Spin here. He says, Kincaid, we need to get him going. I have Dalton Kincaid as my Take Me Higher player of the game. Amari Cooper is now in the fold. Khalil Shakir is healthier. There is a lot of things that this Buffalo Bills offense has going for it to pull coverages away from Dalton Kincaid. To me, there is no more excuse. You got to feed this guy the football. You need to make sure that he is getting open and you are structuring plays where he is the first read and trying to get the ball into his hands. I'm hoping that Dalton Kincaid by the end of the season becomes a guy who is targeted somewhere between, 6 and 10 times per game. And I'm hoping we see that in this game as well. So Dalton Kincaid is my take me higher player of the game. Up next, our wild card player of the game. All right, Dave, who is your wild card player of the game? This is a player that maybe not be one of the stars of this Buffalo Bills team, but maybe an under the radar performance this week that'll help the Buffalo Bills get over the top against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You can kind of throw Amari Cooper in as a wild card, right?
Mhm.
First team as
Yeah.
the
A
Bills.
literal wild card, yes.
He is a literal wild card, so I'll put that to the side. I'm gonna say Ty Johnson is a wild
Mhm.
card today because you have James Cook coming in. Obviously, I know no real injury designation for him, so hopefully he is close to 100%. Ray Davis with that calf, you wonder about how much he's going to play if he's even active, which I do expect him to be active, but the effectiveness. But Ty Johnson, I think, played pretty
Mhm.
well against the Jets. He can be a factor out of the backfield as well in the passing game. We saw him make that nice play in prime time against the Dolphins on a scramble drill from Josh Allen or a broken play from Josh Allen. And the Titans 20th against the running backs out of the backfield as receivers, as I mentioned, from a DVOA perspective. So in a game where maybe James Cook isn't quite 100%, even though he isn't on the injury report, I think Ty Johnson can be a wild card factor in this game, especially with Ray Davis and that calf injury. So I'll say Ty Johnson, wild card player of the game for me.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you mentioned that the Titans were 20th in DVOA versus running backs in the passing game, I scrolled down on my document here and I added Ty Johnson under wildcard player of the game in case you stole like the guy that I had. I was like, all right, I'm gonna have Ty Johnson as a backup plan here because he might make a play or two in the passing game, or the Buffalo Bills might have to lean on him because of the other two running backs being dinged up. So I'll stick with my original wildcard player of the game since you did not take that person, and that is Keon Coleman.
Mm.
I think that, as I mentioned earlier, he's sort of had the knack for the big play for this Buffalo Bills offense this year. Amari Cooper takes some pressure off of him. James Cook is back. Khalil Shakir is getting healthier. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid is a factor as well. There's a lot of talent now around Keon Coleman. A lot of that talent is getting healthy. Expect Keon Coleman. I don't think his numbers this season are going to be crazy in terms of volume, but I think he could be the splash play guy in this offense. When we need a bucket, go up over the top to Keon Coleman. He has a knack for just breaking a tackle and getting some yards after the catch like he did in that Texans game. He has a knack for going up and get it like he did, a couple of times in that Ravens game or in week 1. So Keon Coleman is my wild card player of the game. He might only make 1 or 2 plays, but I think they will be big ones for this Buffalo Bills offense. All right. Up now is our Respect You player of the game. All right. So, our Respect You player of the game, this is one player, and it always turns out to be multiple players from the opposing team, the Tennessee Titans, that we expect, or that we know the Buffalo Bills have to respect in order to be successful in this football game. Dave, who is your Respect You player of the game?
Yeah, for me, it's Tony Pollard. I think you saw Tajay Spears go out last week. You mentioned the statistics around his snap share once Spears went out, over 90% allotment. I think to me, he is going to be the biggest threat for the Titans offensively. We saw, the Bills have struggled a little bit against defending running backs out of the backfield, especially in the screen game. I think Mason Rudolph is competent enough to get Tony Pollard the ball in the screen game, or whether it's in the traditional passing game as well. So for me, I think it's Tony Pollard. I think that he's going to be leaned on heavily by this Titans offense. And while his volume's going to be there, I think the Bills just need to limit his efficiency as much as possible. A player that has been very efficient on a per touch basis in his career. So I'll say Tony Pollard is my Respect You player of the game, with an honorable mention to Harold Landry, who continues to be a menace for the Titans.
We got Spin coming in saying Jeffrey Simmons, Charles G coming in saying Jeffrey Simmons, and I'm in agreement. A little caveat to that: I put Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat because the two of them in the middle of that Titans defense, they have been a force all year. forcing everything to the outside. I think Josh Allen is going to have to make some plays out of the pocket in this game. It's going to be difficult with guys like Harold Landry, as you mentioned, on the edge, but it's going to be tough sledding for the Buffalo Bills to run the ball over, through the middle of that defense with Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat. So it sort of takes an element away from this offense, and it allows that defense to know that just those two guys can sort of take one thing away, and they can prepare more for things that get kicked out to the boundary. So to me, my respected players of the game are Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat. All right. Up next is our fire sale. These are our hottest takes of the game. All right. What is your fire sale, your hottest take from this football game?
Okay, so I'm going, and we haven't really mentioned him during this show, but I'm going with a trifecta for Terrell Bernard today. And what I mean by that is an interception, a sack, and either a fumble recovery or a forced fumble for Terrell Bernard in the middle of that Bills defense. Again, Tony Pollard likely to be featured. Terrell Bernard going to be all over the middle of the field, defending Tony Pollard in the running game as well, chasing him down. And he has shown up since he's been back. It was so nice to have him back as well against the Jets. He made some big plays, but I'm going with a hot take of Terrell Bernard having the trifecta on defense today: an interception, a sack, and either a forced fumble or a fumble recovery.
Spain comes in and says, crazy take. Cooper breaks 10K. I don't know if he goes over 10,000 yards in this game for his career. I don't know. But he also comes in and says Allen 350 passing yards, which against the defense that hasn't allowed a 200 yard
Amari
pass
Cooper.
this season.
Amari Cooper is, 264 yards away from 10K.
Woo-hoo! Oh, 300-yard game from Amari Cooper. No big deal.
If I'm doing my math right, it looks like he's 264 yards away from 10K.
But Allen 350 passing yards is a pretty hot take, given that the Titans haven't given up a 200-yard passer this season. I believe is something that you said earlier in this show. To me, my hot take is the Bills do not give up a touchdown today. And if they do give up a touchdown, it will be a late touchdown with very little ramification. So the only touchdowns that will be scored on the Buffalo Bills defense today, if any, will be garbage time touchdowns. I think it'll be all field goals for the Tennessee Titans in this game. That is my hot take. All right, now it is time to go back to the future with our pre-game predictions. All right, Dave, paint a picture for us. What do you expect from this football game today in Orchard Park?
I think beautiful day. The Ralph's going to be rocking. I know it's going to be windy, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter. That stadium is going to be electric today. A sunny afternoon, 1 p.m. game, home game. The Bills have been on the road for a couple games in a row here, 3 games in a row, finally back home. The crowd's going to be fired up. I think the defense is going to be fired up. And although I do think the Bills might be a little inefficient with the run game today, I think that you could see some success in the passing game, Cooper getting involved, and like Josh Allen having a pretty good game against the Jets last week efficiency-wise. So while I don't think maybe the Bills are going to blow out the Tennessee Titans today, I do think they win this game. And I think that you do see a game where the Bills' red zone defense does hold up, limit the Titans to field goals. Your hot take's good. I don't know if they're going to limit them to all field goals, but I do think that the Bills end up winning this game by a touchdown or maybe close to 10 points. So I'll say Bills 27, Titans 17.
Ooh, that was almost the exact same prediction that I had. I have Bills 27, Titans 16. Bills get the early lead and hold it for most of the game. I think this is going to be a turnover.
How does that math work if you're only predicting field goals?
Because I said the caveat, they get a late touchdown. That doesn't really matter. So
that's fair.
I gave myself the out for this specific prediction. So they get the early lead. They hold it most of the game. Turnover free football on both sides, which is what I think keeps the score close-ish, right? No Will Levis, Mason Rudolph. I think the turnovers are going to go away for the Tennessee Titans. I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to turn the football over much, if at all, maybe one turnover. So I think that keeps the game close-ish. The Titans tack on a late 7 to make it a more respectable score. So my prediction here is Bills 27, Titans 16. And that is what I've got. We got a couple people coming in here. RJ Melville says 21-14 Bills. Roy Collins says Bass gonna make one over 50. So we got the whole gauntlet of Bass takes, because somebody said he was gonna have a hat trick of misses as well. So I saw somewhere earlier, and not to make fun of, not to poke fun, but like someone was like, let's make sure we're cheering on Tyler Bass today, guys. Like, positive reinforcement from the crowd goes a long way. And I'm like, oh, this is where we're at. This is where we're at, making sure to say nice things to our kicker before the game. So that one was kind of amusing.
Little cringy, but hey, to each their own.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Go enjoy for the next 3 hours Jaguars Patriots from London. I say that kind of sarcastically, but also Drake May is a baller, and I'm so mad the Patriots have him. He balled out last week. He's going to continue to ball out. He was my QB1 in that draft class. Of course, Caleb Williams blew up the week that Drake May entered the fold to sort of make me look stupid. But I love me some Drake May. I'm going to go watch some Drake May play football right now. So mad that he's on the New England Patriots, but we're almost there. About 3-4 hours here till kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you look at, we'll see what happens with Drake May, but certainly the early returns show that Jaden Daniels looks to be a stud as well. And maybe we're fortunate that the Patriots don't have Jaden Daniels. So we'll see how Drake May turns out. Obviously, I hope he does poorly because I want the Patriots to lose, but we'll see. Hopefully 2 bad teams sometimes makes for an entertaining game. So
the worse the Patriots do, then he'll be paired with like Travis Hunter next year too. So maybe a couple of wins here and there might not be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, a couple of useless wins to get them out of that top 3 would be nice.
All right. Don't forget that following today's Bills-Titans game, you'll have the Cover One post-game show live with Greg, Aaron, Anthony, and our next show will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. in our normal time slot. Smash that like before you head out of here. We'd always appreciate that. We also appreciate word of mouth. So if you enjoyed this Cover One Air Raid Hour pregame show and you think others would enjoy it, click that share button, share on social media, send a text to a friend, send an email to a friend, anyone you think who'd enjoy participating in when we're live or watching on demand this post-game show. Word of mouth is always the best way to help spread what we're doing here at Cover One, and we would always appreciate it. And as always, thanks to you guys in the comment section. You guys drive the show. You guys have great comments. You guys killed it. There was 2 or 3 things even in this show that I had no intention of talking about today that we ended up talking about just because of comments from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the regulars too, Roy, RJ, Spin, Carl, Charles G, and a bunch of others. You guys were awesome today in the comments section. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!